This movie
Mhm.
is called Lord of the Rings:
The
The
Two
Two
Towers.
Towers.
Not the Twin Towers, as I
No, I
often
know, but that's
accidentally
my
say.
question. So, obviously, the books were written before the movies, but the movie came out, The Two Towers, in 2002,
Yeah.
which means it was a year, if not less than a year, since the
No, it was
Disney.
December, so it was a year and a half. Or a
Okay,
year and 4
so
months.
yeah, so a little
3,
over a year. So it's still pretty
2.
fresh. Um,
Yeah, I'd say so.
after the Twin Towers incident, do you think
9/11.
that they
Let's go.
thought that was going to have any sort of impact on sales of the movie? And if it was in
Um,
bad taste? I feel like nowadays people would think that. I feel like maybe then, I mean, not that it was too long ago, maybe people didn't care as much, but I feel like now people find a way to get upset about everything. Like, how dare you release a movie about two towers when we witnessed that our towers, and I can't, I'm hurt.
um, I have a here's another question. What are the 2 towers?
You're talking about in the
I guess
movie?
it's gotta be, I guess, Isengard and then the Eye of Sauron. Those are the only towers I
Yeah,
can think.
there's
Am
a
I an idiot?
tower in Mordor, and then there's a
Yeah,
tower in
that's
Isengard, and I'm
the
assuming it's kind of the
the Eye of
idea that
Sauron. It's just weird because they're not
very
close together. They're not,
right. So
like,
in the movie, he
they're
does
on the same
say,
side, but it's not, I don't
Saruman
know.
says, "This will be the official joining or something of the two towers." The line is
That
said in
already
the movie.
happened?
The line was said in the movie.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it kind of already did, but this was just
Yeah, I
really
mean,
like
that happened, like, in the first 45 minutes of Fellowship. Saruman's like, "Hey, I'm bad now."
this was just the push of the bad guys, and the bad guys' home are these two towers, so they had to. And then the next one is the good guys coming back. I'm seeing a very similar theme here to Star Wars.
Yes, yeah, and like I said, this one is kind of, like, very Empire-ish.
Yeah. But
And I
before we
think
get into that, dude, we got to talk
yeah,
about some other stuff before we just dive straight in. We're getting a little too hot here. A little too hot. I've made a petition. I haven't, but I think I'm going to.
okay.
To
Petitions always do stuff. They're never
ban
useless.
ban vehicles from the world. I was gonna say the
Mhm.
U.S., but I'm going in. If I'm gonna do this, I'm going all in. And we should just go back to the days where we can ride horse and buggy, or just walk. I
Dude,
mean, I'm
we
cool
just talked about the price of oats in a previous episode.
with that. I think we did because we were talking about
Yeah.
car issues, but all I can think about is my car
Yeah.
issues still.
No, we were talking. That was when oil was like negative
Oh,
$40,
you're
and that's
right.
why we were saying, yeah.
But yeah, since I just got my car checked and they said it's going to cost $1,400 to repair, I might as well just have a horse at that point,
Yeah,
I
that'd be a
mean,
lot cooler. I mean, it would take you roughly 3 times as long to get anywhere.
but do you
But
think we should street legalize horses though? Have a horse lane?
are they not?
What? Are they not?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure horses are technically street legal.
No, stop it
Are
right now. I'm looking.
horses, because I mean, there's horse-drawn carriages and shit
There's
in
what?
cities.
Try that again.
Horse-drawn
Horse.
carriages.
There's horse. Horse drawn.
No, no, no.
Horses
I
do in
think
fact
the
have
audience
rights
will
when
know
it
that I
comes
said
to
that
being on the
correctly.
road, similarly to cyclists and runners who utilize the
Boom,
roadways.
boom. How
But
about
there's
that?
specific regulations. So they're not really street legal as far as like a in the same terms of a vehicle.
Well,
Just like
no,
a
and that
bike's
would be
not a
stupid if
street
they were.
legal. But I guess with what I was saying, like have a horse lane, like there's a bike lane. I guess that could happen. If if a government was like, yeah, we're gonna build an extra lane here and it's just for horses. I don't see anything wrong with that. I'll lead the charge.
It says that a horse's max speed is 55 miles an hour, but there's no way you can go 55 miles an hour on the back of a horse. That's nuts.
You don't think you could go? Wait, you don't think you could go 50 miles an hour on a horse?
Like, if I'm riding a horse, there's no way that horse can go 55 miles an hour. That's like saying if the max human possible speed is like 27 miles per hour, that's what Usain Bolt did, right? He couldn't do that with, like, I know the ratio is off, but he couldn't do that with like a
Another
50-pound
Usain
backpack.
Bolt on him.
He couldn't do that with me on him.
Yeah, that ratio is a little off. But horses are a
Yeah,
lot
no, but like
stronger than humans.
horses are can actually be really fucking heavy, but I think on average they're like 1,200 pounds, 1,500 pounds. So if a human on average weighs about like 180 pounds, or an American 200, then that's like a tenth of their body weight roughly. That's some poor math, but let's say 10%. Then if you weigh 180 pounds, if you're wearing 18 pounds on you, which isn't that much, but still you're not running your max speed at that.
No, they're granted they're not going to run their max speed. Obviously, if they have any additional weight, that's clear. But I
Yeah.
still feel like having a horse having a tenth of their weight is a lot easier for them to carry a tenth of our weight because I feel like they got some strength, bro. I feel like there's some muscular dudes. Like you
Oh
don't take
yeah,
a chunk
yeah.
horse, dude. Have you ever just like
Like a Clydesdale, like those
have you ever just
massive
like
horses.
passed a horse like or like a field with horses and you just see one that's just chonky, dude?
He's the
Not that even
alpha.
all humans are chonky, but I feel like strength to weight ratio and their percentage of body fat is just so much lower than the average human.
Uh,
It's kind of awesome, dude, to ride just a
yeah,
super
it's kind of
chubby
yes or
horse.
no. I mean, I do see tubster horses. Can I just say I don't like chonky. I don't like that word.
Well, I'm using them all. Tubby, chonky.
A tubby's okay because I think of when someone called Patrick on SpongeBob Tubby.
I
He
don't.
goes Tubby. So that's okay. But
Why do I feel like
chonkers
every
feels like a
SpongeBob
bullshit
life?
Reddit beta male kind
Tubby,
of,
chonky, chunkster,
gross.
Fatty McGee,
Okay, Fatty McGee is all right.
Lump.
Apparently, your average galloping speed is like 25 to 30 miles per hour. So
So then
that's
maybe galloping
that's
speed.
a little faster than I thought. Like your average, like you can keep that up
Yeah, dude,
over distance.
that's gallop. A friggin' sprint, dude.
But apparently, a
You go that
sprint
fast, dude?
can be a horse has sprinted 55 miles per hour over a short distance with a person on it, which is nuts.
That's crazy, dude. They don't even care. They don't even know they have somebody on them, dude.
I guess not.
Like picking
I
up a
guess
piece of paper.
for like the Kentucky Derby. I mean, I know that like if you've ever seen the jockeys, they're always really small. Like I can never be a jockey, no matter what. I'm just too large.
What?
Like jockeys, like they're really short, really small guys. Like for the
You're too
horse
tubby.
racing.
You're telling me
So that's got to be a thing, though, right?
you're too tubby?
Well, even
Tubby boy?
even at like high school me, I was still like me being 6'4". My minimum weight is
Oh
still
my
too
gosh.
big.
You're reminding me, since we're going through like all
Oh
the stuff in
no.
my house,
Oh,
I
is
came
there
across
pictures?
lots of old photos, and I came across our old yearbooks.
Oh no.
We look bad. I also found out that
Yeah.
I think that I look better in my 11th grade yearbook photo than I do in my senior year yearbook photo when I had the casual senior photos because you have two. You have your casuals and then you have your formals.
Oh yeah, no,
I had
my formals
I
were
had
much better.
chances to do better. Two. And I still did better the year before, dude. And like you take time to get those senior photos, You take a day, you
Yeah.
hire somebody, you get some nice photos. I still think my 11th grade photo's better, dude. Boy, didn't know how to smile in high school. I tell you what. Ugh. Those were the days.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude. Most jockeys only stand 5 feet tall, and the vast majority of them are between 105 and 119 pounds. So there's no way.
Nah, it's just because they can grip the horse better,
That makes no sense. I
Well,
mean, if anything, I feel like I
stick
could
up that
koala a horse better than them because I mean, my wingspan, like I could probably I could lock fingers underneath a horse if I'm
Could
just
you
bear hugging it,
Could you imagine if people rode horses like not sitting up on them, but
just
like their
laying
stomach
straight down.
basically like just laying on them, stomach down, and wrapping your legs and arms as
No, just the arms. Your legs are shooting straight out. They're the spoiler of the horse.
Yeah, you have to just wave your legs around like at the right kind of angle. They're almost like wings of an airplane, and so they kind of help direct it and like with the airflow and everything. Can somebody sketch that, please? Whoever's listening, if you have
We're
any
not
drawing
at
skills
that.
whatsoever, I want to see a photo of somebody riding a horse like that, please. Preferably
Man, that's actually really interesting though, because like a jockey has to obviously be that small because they're trying to maintain like not be heavy for the horse, but also be powerful enough to like control a horse moving 40 miles per hour. So these like some little like kind of like Bruce Lee motherfuckers, like like pure muscle, 105 pounds of just pure, just constricted. Like they can't move any of their bodies because they just got to be so tight. I don't like that.
I am muscle. I was trying to do a playoff of I am speed. Lightning McQueen. Meow, 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 meow.
Yikes.
That was the sound of like race cars shooting past, not an airport.
I think race car, like NASCAR drivers, are also kind of small.
Dude,
but that can't be for the same reason. That can't be shedding weight.
that can't be because they have to grip a horse better. I mean, let's be real. You want to be on this NASCAR, dude? You want me to you want to be a sponsored NASCAR driver? Get on this horse right now. Wrap your arms and legs around him. Dang, dude, that's
Wait, hold
impressive.
Hold on.
You're on the team.
Lightning McQueen in Cars is obviously a NASCAR car. So he doesn't have headlights. He has stickers. And they even mention that in the movie that he just has stickers, right? Doesn't one of the characters call him stickers?
Yeah.
Doesn't he have his headlights on though when he hits the cuz isn't there a night scene where he's like off of his truck and he's like running around and he's all confused. And doesn't he have headlights on or am I crazy?
You're crazy. He doesn't have headlights.
Okay, he's just like
street lights.
he's night riding it.
He's got night vision, dude.
Dude, that's got to be a thing. Lightning. That's not how you spell lightning. That's lighting. Lightning McQueen.
He doesn't have headlights, brother.
On?
He gets headlights.
Mark? Someone asked, "Are his eyes headlights?" That's not right.
Well, you know what's crazy? So in the beginning of Cars, we're gonna open up a box of worms. Is that how the saying goes?
A worm of boxes.
A can of box. We're gonna open up a can of boxes right here. In the beginning of the movie, when he has fans in the stands, and they're like, "Oh, Lightning McQueen," and there's these two.
Oh, you gotta do the flash. That
girls.
thing?
Yeah, I think the idea, the implication is that they flashed him.
Like they flashed their headlights, but the implication is yes,
which is supposed to be, I guess, sensual by showing your headlights. So does that mean every time a car in that movie shines their headlights, they're like just lifting their shirts up and letting the world see their nipples?
Does that mean that headlights are then therefore sexualized in cars?
That's what I'm saying, dude. But no one else in the rest of the movie has an issue when anybody else turns on their headlights.
Yeah, or just has them exposed.
And Lightning McQueen go, ooh.
Well, yeah, I guess the implication would. Well, no, were they those those old cars from like the 80s? I think that had like I think it was the old Porsche or the old Ferrari that had like the pop up ones that like when they're not on they like go back down into the hood of the car. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So were they those, or did they just turn them on?
They were those, but they didn't have headlights if they didn't like. Maybe they just. Dude, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Headlights are headlights, bro. The issue was their headlights.
Yep. Apparently he gets his headlights replaced, or he actually gets real headlights in the second movie that I never saw.
He gets nipple implants.
He was like Kyle XY originally. You remember that?
Bro, except he didn't have a belly button, so I don't know what you're talking about.
No, he didn't have nipples either, I'm pretty sure.
Really?
I just looked up the scene also. They were the type of cars where their headlights come all the way out.
It still doesn't matter though.
Obviously that makes it worse because
then
they are the only type of cars that can normally have them hidden. And everyone else pretty much just always has them out. So there's some very strange implications there.
Next time you're driving at night, you need to turn your headlights on. With that being said, let's jump into some movies, dude. Jump into some movie news, dude.
Yeah.
So something kind of interesting that I found.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
yes,
right,
I'm
guys.
recording.
How are we doing today?
Well, it's okay, but what can I do for you?
Me, you,
okay,
you and me. How are you guys doing today? I'm speaking right to you guys, the audience, because right now, Nate's off doing his thing, and you know what? That's okay. You just give
Yeah,
him
we're just gonna cut this out. So
what? Huh? Oh, he's back. Welcome back. Sorry, I was connecting with the audience, and you kind of interrupted it. So if you want to leave for another couple minutes, we were kind of
Okay.
getting on a level. But I'll send you a text like when you want to come back. Um, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Did you leave? Are you gone? I feel like I can't do this anymore because I feel like we're being listened to. I think we're just gonna jump back into the regular podcast. Nate. Oh, the grocery store. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Nope, he's gone. All right. So, welcome back, guys. Let me start over. My name is Tyler. My name is Tyler Gillette. If we're gonna go real deep here, my middle name is Charles. Tyler Charles Gillette, and this is me. Being upfront and honest with you guys, getting vulnerable. Talking a little bit about me, myself, my full name. I think.
yeah, but I'm gonna cut that out though.
Oh, you're back.
So,
You're back. You're actually back.
Yeah.
Were you there the whole time?
No,
I didn't think so.
I
Okay,
did leave now.
so welcome back.
I'm gonna listen to it
My
though.
one-on-one time with the audience, and I really don't appreciate it.
Again, not gonna be in there.
It is. It's going to be there, and if it's not, I'm going to be really upset because, I had a really really close connection that was starting, and
If it's funny, I'll leave it in. But I'm like I said, it's gonna be cut out.
cool. So that's going to be left in. I'll make sure to remind you about it throughout the episode. That way, if I mention it later,
This isn't gonna make it in either.
not there, then we can have some backlash. But time to get into some movie news, and we'll get back to our audience connection later.
We're not gonna talk about Mia and Tia, the two cars that.
No, we're not. We're done. We're done with cars. So something interesting that I found or came across somehow Marvel related. I feel like I always find something Marvel related, which is
Here we go.
not intentional.
Feels pretty intentional.
So Endgame setup for the new Loki show that's coming.
Yes.
How like in Endgame, how he got the Tesseract and then like disappeared and you never know what happened when they're going through their time heist, and people were like, "Oh yeah, that's gonna be the start to the Loki series." Apparently, it was an accident.
Like they didn't know they were making a Loki series back then. They just did that because I thought it was funny.
Well, I don't even know if they might not have even known they were going to make a Loki series. I'm not sure, or they might have. I don't know, but they said, like, when asked if Marvel, like Kevin Feige or whatever, had them put that in the movie, like that twist where he just disappears, in order to lead into Loki,
Right.
they replied, McFeely, who is, I believe, one of the writers, said, "No, we just thought it was a juicy way to upset the heist." That's what he says in quotes. So, and then I guess they're like, "Oh, that's a good idea," which is kind of interesting because I think they were planning on having a Loki show already. So I wonder if that changed the entire trajectory of the show, or they thought, "Oh, this is a perfect way to just lead into it."
Yeah, because the only other way to do it, other than have some bullshit reason on how he, I mean, I guess they could have just done something off screen or something. I don't know. But they were either going to do, because the obvious other choice was just kind of like how the Black Widow movie is going to be sometime in our past, was do the same thing with Loki. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of glad that they're doing this though, because then you still get all the like character development of him through all the movies. You don't have to go back. Like that's one thing that's kind of weird about like Black Widow, is that you don't like you're going to be watching this movie with some pre-version of her pre-Avengers, so it's going to be kind of like, I guess
that's not true at all, actually, because their time heist happened in the first Avengers, so all of Loki's character development after the first Avengers.
That's totally true.
Which actually might be a more mischievous version of Loki, because I feel like he gained some sort of humility and stuff like that after, like his mom died in the second Thor movie.
Mischievous is a pretty like light way of putting, like a fairly bad dude.
Yeah, but I'm just it's still, more, I guess you could even just say more evil of a character, because he, was, as he progressed, he got a little more heroic, still stayed, mischievous, but he gained a little bit of humility and I guess respect for others to some extent after, like I said, the death of his mom and then all that other stuff that he went through the next few movies. But this is just after he decided, I'm gonna like take over the world and stuff, and he's like in the process of doing that. He just got stopped and was like, well, got this Tesseract thing, so see you dudes, I'm gonna go take over the world somewhere else now. But anyways, I just thought that was interesting because yeah, I thought that that was actually put there for reasons, but it was an accident. Next thing, which is a little more interesting, a little more overall encompassing about movies in general.
Okay.
Regal Cinemas and AMC Theaters, which are two very big theater franchises.
Are you gonna talk about the Universal thing?
Yeah. It's
Yes, I
no
had
longer
seen
going to
it.
show Universal movies in theaters for, I
So
guess, the foreseeable
this is
future.
like a permanent thing, yeah, like a unless it's changed, there's that it's not like a, like, quarantine, like, weird, like, thing, this is like a permanent change
Right. Well, because
because
the reason they're doing it is
yeah,
because Universal saying after quarantine they're planning on still like releasing things online.
aligned the same day as they would be theatrically, released, which is crazy, and that's the that this was there have been like a few instances historically of like theaters basically being scared that they were going to get replaced, that they were going to be replaced with VCRs. And so there was a big panic back then. And then obviously when streaming came around, like when Netflix first became a thing, also that was another big time where they were like, this is it. No one's going to go to the movies anymore. And that has not been true by a wide margin. I mean, if anything, box office numbers have only grown. Even when you account for inflation overall, like people go to movies multiple times, like way more than they have in the past. But um, what's it? This is quite different because I mean, um, being able to watch them the same day. Now, I wonder how much it'll cost to watch it the same day. Like, will you have to rent the movie for like $15?
Right. And it's also interesting because when you go to a movie theater,
Every person has to buy a ticket.
right? So if you and your friend,
If I rent it and I have my 5 buddies over, you know, we only paid once.
they're gonna make you scan your room. It's gonna come over with they're gonna come up with an app where you have to like scan your room and it's a facial recognition. So you
Well,
go around your
so
room and depending on how many faces it sees, how much you have to pay.
the UFC is notorious for like punishing people, not individuals having like trying to show it for like show their fights with their friends at their homes, but you know that like UFC fights cost like $60 to $80 for the pay-per-view to watch it in your house.
And I feel
It's
like
like
you can do
crazy.
that because I mean, there's more movies
It's
coming out.
expensive, and it's like a big event usually, what I mean? Well, UFC fights happen all the time, but, like, especially the big ones are a little bit more rare, and there's, like, undercard fights and stuff too, but, whenever, like, there have been instances of obviously, if you were, like, a business, like, if a bar or if, like, a gym or something like that wants to, like, show a pay-per-view fight for their clientele, they have to pay way more. Like they have to pay like the business license for it, and it's way more expensive. And that's why they usually will have like a cover or something like that if they want to do that. But there have been instances where like a gym will be like not officially, but they'll just be like like a small little boxing gym will be like, hey, like let's get our buddies together and we'll watch the UFC fight. We'll just do it here. We got a projector. Like it's not a thing that we're making money on. It's just like buddies getting together and they just pay the regular pay per view and like UFC finds out and like sues them and like gets all insane about it.
Right. So
So that's what I'm trying to see is like, is there going to be like some kind of similar thing with movies, or is the movie pass going to be really expensive? Are you going to see like, are you going to go to like a bar or something like that? And they're going to be like, hey, Avengers just came out. Y'all want me to throw it on? Or, like that'll be weird, right?
yeah, I don't know how they're going to make the same amount of money unless they charge more. But also here's my question is what do you think about it?
Mhm.
Because so these theaters are basically saying, okay, so Universal is saying they're seeing so much success by releasing them this way, obviously because of the quarantine.
Yeah.
So and the movie theaters are closed, so obviously they're going to see more success. And I somewhat get where they're coming from as far as like not saying I necessarily agree with it or not, but I understand that they say, okay, cool, gives me more people options. We can probably make more money doing this, have the options of seeing it in theaters or at home, and then all these theaters are like, well, we're not going to show you movies. So,
Mhm.
but from the theater's perspective, do you think it's smart of them or not? Because if if they want to make money off of those movies, well, just by saying we're not going to show them at all, they're obviously then losing out on any money. But do you think that their perspective is, well, I think a lot of people might see them at home anyways. We're going to make less. We have to at least make a stand because Universal can't stand to just do it through releases, at least, right now, like at home release. And so they're going to
Yeah.
need to have to stop that. And that's kind of their way of standing up. Like, what do you think? Do you think it's even worth it? Or do you think that theaters are going to say, well, we're not going to show them? So that people are just going to be like, well, if I can't see it, then I'm just going to get it at home anyways. And they're just kind of handing Universal more money that way. They're making it more successful.
So I think what the issue really is that people are not going to want to stop going to the theaters. It's
Right. The people have to
it's
be on
more
board.
important. Yeah, it's more like there's more to it going than just watching the movie itself. It's social aspect. It's a very obviously a very common like dating, habit, I guess. And so it's wider than just having access to the movie. As a consumer, I'm kind of for the idea of Universal showing their stuff because I watch a lot of movies, and it's expensive one to go to the theater all the time, but it's also not my favorite environment for a lot of things that I watch. Like watching it at home where I have control over the volume, subtitles, no subtitles, pausing it, that kind of stuff, and I can eat, and there's obviously no other people on their phones or talking or any of that kind of stuff. I really like that idea, and so as a consumer, I'm kind of for it, but broad scale, like how it'll affect, I do think that it'll hurt um as far as indie move like smaller films and less action based blockbusters going into theaters. I think those movies can still make money in the streaming sphere, but it'll hurt their chances of actually being in theaters. So like the ability to go see something like The Lighthouse or some of these like smaller A24 style movies will be a lot harder to do the more that you move away from theaters, because paying for distribution and that kind of stuff when you really can just have it on a site, like A24 could come out with their own site where you rent movies straight from them, and that would they could probably make a bunch of money doing that way, opposed to having to you know cut their revenue in half, sharing with theaters and stuff like that. So I don't know, it's a strange thing. I think if other production companies also take this method, then it will have a larger impact. But I think the theaters are going to fight back enough that other studios will be scared to do it now that Regal and um, what was a Regal and AMC, was that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that they are kind of fighting back against it, I mean, those are your two biggest theater chains. Everything else is just your small ones like NCG where we're at. Um, but
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm wondering if you like agree with the theater's decision to do that. Also, because again, like you were saying, from a consumer perspective, you like the idea of being able to see it at home. But
yeah,
I mean, sure, I like watching movies at home. But if I had the chance, hands down, I would always rather see it in a movie theater. That's just me, and it's very
every
opinion based.
movie, no matter what.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I
Wow.
can't think
Yeah.
of a movie that I'd rather not see in theaters.
Something like Star Wars or Marvel or like your big blockbuster stuff, absolutely. But something like something more intimate or quieter and a little bit more, I don't know, just I mean, imagine like The Irishman. I don't want to see The Irishman in theaters. You know what I mean? Like I that the amount of people, especially like a crowded theater. If I have a theater by myself, or if there's like one other like couple down the row or something like that, then fine, perfect. You're like, yeah, great. Like that sounds, I mean,
Yeah,
then
but
obviously
I don't ever
theaters can
really.
have a better screen. But crowded theaters full of people talking, or screens, like people on their phone or just shifting around or just crinkling of candy wrappers, all that bullshit. No.
Yeah, but
Mm.
I feel like that doesn't happen a ton for me because I don't go to a super crowded movie theater all the time unless it's a premiere of a big like Marvel movie or
Yeah.
something like that. Every time else like I go, there's groups here and there, but it's not crazy enough to really distract me. So if it was distracting, then yeah, obviously that would be annoying and that would change
Well,
my
when you
opinion.
when you shortly move to Alpharetta or whatever, and you're in the city atmosphere, I'm sure, because the times I've seen movies up there opposed to up in like the north, like, more populous areas, it's always a way worse experience.
Yeah.
We just are lucky down here where we're just populated enough to have large movie theaters that aren't just like little crap like dollar theaters, but also not popular enough so that if you go at like a slightly off time, as long as you're not there at Friday at 8 p.m., you're gonna have like a mostly empty theater.
Yeah,
for pretty much.
I still love the experience of going to a theater, but my point is, what we're saying is the consumer has to be on board with what the theaters are doing, because if there's people that like to go see movies in theaters and all that kind of stuff, but they go, oh well, the theaters
Most people aren't gonna think.
aren't showing the next Fast and Furious, and it's now on. They were just streaming it here. Well, there's people that are going to be like, well, they're not. I'd rather go, but I'm just going to watch it here now
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they don't have it.
they're not gonna
You
do
have to
anything
have
about
somebody
it. They're
not
just gonna.
just who likes going to see movies in theaters, but is so passionate about it that they're willing to say, no, I'm not watching that here because I want to
That's
see
not
it in theater, and I'm taking the theater side. That's my point. Are there enough people out there that are
Are
going to
you even one of those
be
people?
willing to do that? Um,
If
I think
Marvel
it.
did that, if
I
they said we're going to release our stuff online, and then AMC and Regal boycotted Marvel or Disney movies in general,
Right.
would you
So
stop
I
seeing
think it
Marvel?
depends on what the movie is, because I really, really do, and I really like the theater experience, and I think that
Mhm.
movies should have the opportunity to be seen in a theater. Um, I think that it depends on the movie. Now, if it was a Marvel movie, because I do want to keep up to date, and I'm very excited about what's going to come next, or very at least curious as kind of to what's going to come next, that curiosity is going to win. If theaters aren't showing it, I'm going to watch it. But most other movies, I I would definitely try my best to not see them and take that theater side, just because I kind of do appreciate where they're coming from, trying to save that industry. Now, I don't necessarily think it's going to go anywhere, but it's just an interesting, because some moves are being made that is altering the way we're going to see movies. So I don't really know what to think about it.
Yeah, I you haven't seen anything, and I'm kind of half asking you this about how much it would cost to rent a day one release, right?
No, I do not know.
Because I've been for the idea of there being a digital release of movies that you could buy for a while, like before all this that would come out at the same time. I would just like have to acknowledge that it would be a very like luxury premiere service. Like it would be an expensive thing. Like if you could pay $50 to have your own to rent basically a movie the day it comes out. um so that if you wanted to, like, say you were somebody very wealthy, had like a little private theater in your house or something like that, and then you could pay just to have a movie shown there the day it comes out. That way you never have to deal with the environment. Because I personally, as much as I also like the theater experience for some, like for those kind of things, not if I had a private theater in my home and with like 10 seats in it or whatever, and I could just have all the boys over and we could just watch a movie in there like brand new, I'd much rather do that than go to some stinky AMC.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's gonna be interesting, because I do know that there are people that like would rather watch a movie in their home, and I'm not, like shaming them for that. If that's where you want to see a movie
Yeah.
and that's where you enjoy seeing a movie, cool. So I am intrigued with the option of, well, having options, but I would just hate for it to completely take over and destroy theaters too, and I don't think it's at that point. Um,
Yeah, it's all about that's the thing, is that it's all about how the companies react. Because I think my general point was earlier is that if the system is set up so that where the companies just keep going, like say Universal decides to do this, and all big movie production companies decide to let you stream their movies for some other cost, as long as it's at least equivalent to the theater cost the day it comes out, people will still go to the theater, but it'll just be for specific things more than it'll be for, so people they'll continue to watch stuff like Marvel in theaters and other stuff like that for the most part. But they will probably stop going to there'll probably be less just random, like hey, let's what's playing this weekend, oh, this random movie I've never heard of, oh, I guess I'll go watch it. Because that does happen, especially with like older generations that was more accustomed to when they were a kid, they would just go to the movies on a weekend not knowing anything about what was playing or what they were doing. So it'll just change it a little bit. But if AMC and Regal just block everybody out that wants to do that, then that could have larger ramifications on what happens to theaters overall. But I don't
right.
think this will kill it.
And especially like smaller indie movies that do get shown in theaters and make, you know, a decent chunk from theaters, you have to figure out how to make renting at home or watching a movie like for one watch at home an equivalent price. You know, like we were saying, if it's like a ticket price of, you know, $10, but 5 people get to watch it, you might run indie movies out of business if they're not going to be shown in theaters. And then you're talking about an $8 or $10, you know, viewing session, but for 5 people, that's an issue. So again, we
Well,
haven't heard anything about
not
prices or anything.
necessarily, because for one thing, most of these indie movies they're not expected, and they don't have to make nearly as much money as, you know, something like a $500 million Avengers movie. You
No,
know, I
not as
mean,
much, but they need to make a profit off it, or else they're not going to be able to
yeah,
make more movies in the
but I
future.
don't think that would ever be an issue, because plenty of people right now, they make profits, and most of the time they have limited theater runs to even begin with, and then after, you know, and if they're only shown to you know, because you couldn't watch The Lighthouse down here, it wasn't showing in our, you know, like our theaters around our area. I mean, if you went up to Atlanta, there was probably a couple that were showing it, but only for a few weeks, I'm sure, you know, because
Yeah,
it
but I mean,
probably wasn't
yeah,
filling up theaters. So it's really, I would have guessed that for movies like that, theater box office numbers aren't the majority of where they get the money.
but I mean, still,
I could be
limited
wrong.
is better than nothing because however many, you know, we'd have to do the research, but it's like for a movie like that, how much do they make in theaters? Because then you would pretty much have to divide that by like, if you have people that like 4 people sitting down to watch a movie, let's say an average of 4 people, maybe 2 or 3, but you have to divide that number by like, if we're
Oh,
saying
I
an average
wouldn't
of
say that
3
would be an
people,
average at all.
you have to divide
No.
that by 3 because that's how much you'd be making if, you know, every 3 people had to buy 1 ticket. So I don't know. I think it has the potential to still hurt it. Maybe not a ton, but it has that potential. So it's just interesting to see where it'll go because I don't really have any more news about that
Yeah.
because that was posted as of like yesterday.
If I had to guess, I'd say Universal buckles and changes their plans. I think that they're afraid of missing out because like Universal owns like Jurassic Park. So imagine that like the next Jurassic World movie comes out or
Yeah,
whatever.
in this
And
article
you,
it
and it
specifically
just
says we'll no longer show Universal movies like Fast and Furious and Jurassic World, and those are
yeah.
2 movies that are coming out within the next year that are
And I mean, I'm
big
pretty
ones.
sure Regal and AMC must make up um like how many, like there are like 4,500, almost 5,000 screens in the US. Like it's not that big
I
of a
would say
number.
those 2 together are over half.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you're instantly losing out on like a huge market. So I don't. That's to me that seems like
Yeah,
Universal
but
couldn't take that hit
anyways,
unless they
I
really are making so much
what's it?
money online. I was just saying, unless they really are making just a ton of money, you
Yeah.
know, online, which I don't see that either. But
All right. Well, I say it's time. We need to jump in. I think we spent, you know, this whole episode is supposed to be all Lord of the Rings, brother.
oh yeah,
We lingered for a while, but we're here. We need to get on to the main topic at hand. 40 minutes in or something crazy.
well, yeah, I don't think it'll be that.
Roughly 40 minutes in. All right. So, movie number 2. What'd you think, dude?
Well, I have seen this movie many times. So it's really, and this, gosh, it's definitely this one or Fellowship that are my favorite of the 3. But man, I'm kind of leaning
feel
toward
like
Fellowship, which on the rewatches.
I feel
I'm
like you're
kind of
gonna
leaning
say the
toward
same thing
Fellowship.
about the 3rd movie, because you were
No,
like because this one you're like, wow, you know, I think this one might be my favorite. Then we watched this one, you go, well, maybe it's between this one or the last one. You
well, it's
keep
just it
adding
had
them.
been a long time since I had watched all 3 of them, and I had seen Two Towers the most. Because it's I think it's like Empire, it's kind of regarded as like the best one, like critically and like audience stuff like that, like the, you know, but at the same time I've got like a kind of a sore spot for Fellowship. I don't know, it's fun. It's got more Gandalf stuff in it, which Gandalf is kind of my fave. And in this movie, well, yeah, you find out that he's not quite dead.
I
Well, sort of.
figured.
Yeah. Were you guessing that?
Yeah, I was guessing that.
I was trying to think of a way to ask you, like, did you know he wasn't dead?
Well, if you look at the cover of all the movies, he's on them. So I'm like, well, it
Shit.
could be some kind of weird flashback or some other kind of version. And to be honest, I kind of want to talk about that, but
Yeah.
let me hold off on that.
Mhm.
And just give you
Broad.
overall.
Yeah.
I loved it, dude.
You loved it?
I
Oh,
liked it better than the
wow.
first one.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Loved it. Wow.
After the like just from the beginning, and I think part of this, and I might have to go back and rewatch them again.
Mhm.
I don't know how soon that'll be with us having to watch, a bunch of other things, and they are very, they're lengthy movies. So
Sure, sure.
who knows if I actually will rewatch it or when that'll be. But maybe it's because the first movie I was maybe I felt like maybe I was just observing the first movie, whereas this one I was invested in this
Mm.
movie. And like I don't do that intentionally. And maybe it was just because it was something brand new and I had something, I had this what's the word I'm looking for? It was very hyped up. And so I wanted to live up to certain expectations or whatever, or just like my thought, like, I had this thought process of what I think Lord of the Rings story wise might be before you even watch it, just because you've heard so much about it.
Right.
And so if it takes a little bit of a different turn than what you expected, you have to just be like, well, that's fine, and just jump on board, which is true. It is fine. But it's just jumping into something brand new. Um, I guess feels like more work than once you're a little more invested into it, I
No,
guess.
I get that. And I think, since, all these movies are like 3 hours long, or right at basically, and, the first one obviously has a lot to set up. So this second one, since you already know everything and what's basically all the characters, what's going on, it's a lot better paced, and
And
it
bro,
has, like, no like, a lot less Hobbit stuff going on. There's still Hobbit stuff going on, but, like, I find that most people, usually, and myself included, aren't quite as interested as in the Hobbit storylines, like Frodo and Sam, as they are into and Merry and Pippin, as they are into, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, like that kind of storyline. So, um, what's up?
oh no, and I was gonna say, like, being more invested into it. Like I was excited to start this movie. Not that I wasn't
Mhm.
excited to watch the other one because I was excited to get into it, but I was excited going into this one just to see where it was going to go. And just from the beginning, because I think the best part of Fellowship was the entirety of the the Mines of Moria,
Yeah, okay.
and like just that
Sure.
whole sequence of stuff that was going on was my favorite part of the movie, and that's where I felt like it picked up.
Mhm.
Um, and it obviously started off with that, with the whole Gandalf stuff, and from the start, like this was the first time I think in this series that I actually like had one of those giddy like oh I try to say nerdy, but not even that, because I'm not like, I'm not, I don't know too much about Lord of the Rings. I'm
Yeah.
watching for the first time, but even just from when you bring back something from the last movie, one of the best parts of the last movie, and they expand on it, and epic stuff is happening from the get go. Like I'm smiling, like yo, yo, like I was in it, like I was just in it from the beginning. So it was a lot more. I enjoyed this one on a deeper level a lot more than I did the first one.
This
Um,
movie actually got nominated for Best Picture in
really,
2002. Yeah,
yeah.
I would not have guessed that. I was just reading that right now. Yeah, it won 2 other awards and got nominated for a lot. Yeah, so this is, yeah, generally I'd say that, yeah, I wasn't sure exactly on how you feel about this one. I know that it's generally regarded, like I've said, and it's a little bit more actiony. I mean, you got Battle of Helm's Deep, you know. Um,
Right, and I've even seen clips of like all the Helm's Deep stuff here and there, and even from like the corridor crew stuff where they react to like visual effects and
yeah,
stuff. You see clips from Lord of the Rings and all this other stuff, and just with how long it's been around, I've seen like clips. So just seeing the visual of the army coming to Helm's Deep and all that stuff, like I knew something was about to go down because regarded as one of the big battles in the series,
right.
um and I was excited to see how, even from the clips that I saw, how they kind of like play into each other and like uh what like actually flesh it out, because I really didn't know what was gonna happen.
I don't know why it just reminded me of this, but there's a very specific shot in this of I think it's when I don't know if you remember, but they're like fighting. They're on horseback with some of the guys from what is it, Ron? What I can never remember the stupid name of the place. You know,
Rohan?
Theoden's Rohan. Thank you. They're riding with the riders of Rohan, and they're about to go up against the Urukai on the wargs, which are like those hyena looking things.
Yeah.
And Legolas does this insane, like, get up on a horse motion where he's on like he's on the right side of it and he like swings up under the neck and then gets onto the right
With
side in slow
0
motion. It
momentum.
looks
None.
ridiculous.
None whatsoever. The momentum should have went the other
No,
direction
it
and just
doesn't make any
floats
sense
on top of the
because he
horse,
jumps left and goes right. It's
basically.
it's hilarious.
I just kind of went
Uh,
in my head and just went, "You know what? Elf magic."
yeah, yeah. Turns out if you're alive for 800 years, you can learn how to do that, I guess.
Um, yeah, and there were a couple things here and there that, like, still, I guess, was one of the things, like in the last movie where I was like, "Oh, it doesn't make a ton of sense." I feel like there were less in this one, or maybe I didn't see him as much because I was just more invested.
Mhm.
But there were a couple of times like that, but I felt like I was able to just move past it better, partially just because I felt like I didn't care as much because I was just more
You're
invested.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and maybe that helped because there was a lot more grand events happening in this one, because obviously they're building to, like the war and of like, like obviously they're fighting for Middle Earth and all this, and so like it's going to get more epic as it goes along.
Right.
So there's a lot more grand events that are you build up to throughout this movie. Whereas the first was a setup of the Fellowship and this group, which can be really cool to explore characters and nuances, and I think they did a really good job with that. And I think that first movie is very important and very necessary and still enjoyable because you get to meet these people who all have their own special, like for example, Avengers Endgame has a lot of main characters
Mhm.
and they're able to let all of them shine very well.
Right.
And I almost compare it to that because I felt like I did enjoy the second movie more, but the first movie is still it's still a good movie, and I felt like I was each person, and the Fellowship all comes in at one time basically, but they were able to make each character different, and you could still understand kind of who they were, and then throughout the rest of the series they're just continuing to flesh them out.
You wouldn't compare it more to, like, Infinity War?
I mean, sure, whatever. I'm just saying a movie with a lot of characters, bud. That's all I'm saying.
Better.
Um, so yeah, and also, and maybe I don't know if I'm just imagining this, but one of the notes that I took down, I was like, I think the acting is better in this movie than the first one. And I'm like, maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe I'm just more invested, but I feel like just overall, not that it was horrible or bad necessarily, but there were some certain moments. Like I just felt like through what they were doing and saying and the way they were portraying it in this movie, I felt more connected
Right.
to than the last one. What do you think?
Um, I think that the main issue that I have honestly with the acting in all of these movies, is from, uh, Frodo and Sam. It's Elijah Wood and Sean Astin.
Maybe that's why,
Um
maybe because there were less of them in this movie.
Yeah, that's usually which it's just weird because they're I don't know if it's actually bad or if the like translation of like this of like the super kind of naive hobbits into this world just feels a little off. I don't know if I can make that call, but it's just really strange. So and but that's they're pretty much it is just less in this, but it feels the same. They're basically the same thing. I really hate how Frodo rolls his eyes into the back of his head every time something with the ring goes on. It just feels so odd. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't. I don't know. But
Maybe
that's pretty much all I can recognize. Everyone else always felt like a great. All your rest, your main cast. Everyone from Gandalf to, Aragorn, and then obviously I really love. Although the king, like the guy, I can never remember his name, but the guy who has basically kind of control over King Theoden through Saruman, who's kind of like he's got actually kind of a Loki look to him, but like more gross.
Yep.
He is super over the top, and I think it's kind of the character, but it does.
He's
He
not trying to
seems
hide
like
that he's
a
evil.
caricature.
Like,
Huh?
do you mean like he's not trying to hide that he's evil?
Well, it's not even that, he's just so, like, over the top, evil, sniveling, conniving character.
Yeah,
It's
but I
just
feel like in this series
ridiculously
I've
evident,
seen
you know?
over the top, like, though, like they're taking those kind of like evil or good or heroic type of characters and they're pushing the envelope on them, and it feels to make more sense in this kind of world. So I kind of get it, and yeah, I guess it is a little over the top, but I just felt like he wasn't trying to hide that he's evil. Like if that was their intention, like it's very obvious. That would be the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You also, I mean, I know he has control kind of over the king, and they're basically just doing what the king says. But I mean, that it should have a limit, right? I mean, you won't just do whatever the king says whenever. I mean, at some point, the
You
guys
didn't live
who
back in
actually
those
enforce
times.
the rules got to be like, "This guy's stupid, bro. He clearly evil."
Yeah, you didn't live back in the time of kings and queens, dude. You do whatever your king says.
Nah, they got overthrown. That happened.
Right. You're gonna overthrow the king, just you. You can do it, Nate.
No, I'm saying like all the yeah. That's what I'm saying. That is
But
actually what I'm saying.
really quickly too with the acting, even with those two characters, because I do agree with what you were saying, but when you have like Frodo and Sam in the beginning, and I think that's actually kind of when I noticed it was at the very beginning when it picks up with those two. As it went on, there was more stuff with the ring, like you said, like where he rolls his eyes back into his head, and all that stuff is kind of strange, I guess. But the beginning part with those two felt really good and really natural. For me, like the beginning of their little adventure, I was like,
Yeah.
I felt like maybe it was they got more invested, and maybe overall why I'm thinking that the acting overall
I
got
think
better was maybe everyone was
Gollum
more invested in their characters. I don't know.
I think Gollum gives them another like gives them more kind of, it divides them up a little bit because obviously what's it Sam, is very distrusting of him, kind of as he should be, and Frodo is, feels bad for him, and so that kind of causes a divide between them, so it gives them a little bit more to work with other than just being, perfect little friends the whole time, which, gets a little stale. But so I could see, yeah, how that gives them a little bit more to do and makes it more interesting.
Yeah.
um
But
but yeah.
really quickly going back to
Mhm.
I mentioned this a little bit just to give an overall view of like kind of why I was more into everything and all that. But the opening, dude, with Gandalf,
With Gandalf is great, isn't it?
and I I think I think Gandalf has to be my favorite character in this thing. And when he left for a while and they
Mhm.
were fighting at Helm's Deep, I was like, dude, where's Gandalf? I was like, he's been gone for a hot minute. We need him back. What is he doing? He rode off on his white horse, and he's got to come back. We need him. And I was
Yeah,
like,
yours named
we needed more
Shadowfall.
Gandalf, dude. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. That's kind of why I like Fellowship a little more, because I also, I mean, it's hard not to love Gandalf, and that's kind of like his. That really feels like his movie. Is Fellowship? I feel like he probably is in it the most in that one. Although I could be misremembering Return of the King, but so yeah, I mean, but it is still, I love like when he's riding off on his white horse and his all white with white beard and white hair and white staff, and that like theme is playing, the it's like almost western like, it's super dope. Yeah, it's great.
Question though about Gandalf,
Mhm.
because he was known as Gandalf the Gray, and
Yep.
now he's Gandalf the White.
Right.
So he technically, what I'm getting from this is
Mhm.
what I perceived. He technically fought the demon. He won,
The
but he
Balrog.
died.
Yep.
And then basically the mystical magics of the wizards and all of that basically were like, no, you haven't served your full purpose, and basically gave him life back to fulfill this purpose.
Yeah, he's reborn. That's why he doesn't quite remember
Right. So that's
who he was.
right. So
Yeah.
that's why he was like Gandalf, like, oh, that is what they used to call me. I was Gandalf the Gray. And now I'm
Mhm.
Gandalf the White. So is it a different, it's almost like it's not quite the same Gandalf. That's what I'm trying to say is
Yeah.
he came
Yeah.
back, but it's like it's almost like the old version died and the new version came back as this reborn, like almost with a little bit of amnesia, same dude, but kind of like has to still jog his memory to know
He's a
exactly
little
what
bit more
happened.
like no non like the Gandalf the Grey, as much of strikes me more as kind of like he's almost got like the weird Jedi mentality where it's kind of like, oh well, we'll do things if we have to. We usually try not to get involved, and that kind of like that kind of a little bit mentality of it, like the I guess prequel Jedi really more than the rest of them. But Gandalf the White is immediately like, nah, I ain't fucking around with all this. Like he walks right into Theoden's things and like basically immediately fixes that situation, and then it's like, okay, I gotta go fuck some other people. I'll be back. Like
Well, yeah,
he's just
but
no
also I feel
nonsense.
like because he
He's
was
getting
sent
stuff
back with a purpose, and now like that's all he has to do is like, finish this quest, I guess that he was given, which is why he was given life back. But yeah, so but even just like having more of the non-nonsense, I do feel like he's the same person but a different person at the same time. Does that make any sense?
yeah, and it's cool that they were able to get that through, man.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Um,
Like, is that how you perceive it? Do you like that?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I definitely. I think that's what it's supposed to be. Yeah, for sure. And I do like that aspect because I mean, it kind of whenever you have a kill a character and then he just comes back, especially in this situation because from the movie's perspective, you don't really know much about like how or why. It's just like magic. So having some kind of change in the character and having that it I don't want to say necessarily stakes, but it feels like something did happen. It didn't feel like it was useless. It was like, well, why did he even die? And if he was just gonna come back, then
I do agree. Yeah, because I think that it's better than just magically coming back with no change. Because I even feel like it's to the point where even when Frodo sees him again, which I assume will happen. Don't tell me, but I assume it'll happen. Um, that he will like Frodo especially will know that there's something different, and he'll like still miss his old pal Gandalf because he'll feel like he's almost kind of talking to a new person that has a similar memory. Does that make sense?
right. Yeah,
I
no,
don't
I
know,
get that.
but I do like that. Yeah, I'm trying to go through here. I didn't take very many notes because I was just kind of watching, which I
Yeah,
think is good.
I
Uh,
get that.
Definitely think that another one of my favorite parts was when Gollum had his like inner argument with himself, him and Schmeagol, uh,
Uh,
back
one.
and forth. There was when one night when Frodo and Sam were like sleeping, and then like he's like talking to himself and basically telling him to leave, like telling the evil part of him, like Gollum, to leave, and it kind of
You're
like
saying earlier in the movie, not at the very end, right?
this is like yeah, this was like a third of the way through. It was like almost at an
Okay,
hour.
I was talking about them.
Yeah, and the camera was going like from one side and then it would slowly pan over to the other side and the other guy would talk and then it would pan back over to the other side,
Mhm.
and that panning motion got quicker and then it just got to jump cuts, and the way they
Right,
edited that to where they were showing it's the same person, and once you understood that they jumped it just back and forth to him being on like the right side of the screen facing left and then the left side of the screen facing right when he was talking through his own like from each perspective. um I don't know, I thought it was really well done, and it was very interesting, and then he basically banished his evil side, Gollum, out of him, but only temporarily. He
right.
came back.
I think that that's that kind of like the way he portrays that is a big guideline for a lot of how um you know characters who are have an aspect of insanity or multiple personalities within themselves kind of like it's are shown later. I mean, you can even see kind of like how it's a very similar thing to a movie like I don't know, did you ever watch Split?
I didn't know.
Okay. Well, obviously that, has that same kind of like multiple personality. Obviously there's a lot more personalities in Split than just, basically you're evil and you're good. But it's I feel like that Gollum in this especially because I think he gets the most amount of time in this movie really shows and helps we're kind of created the basis for like how it's done
Yeah,
since then.
yeah, because I've seen other things do it like this as well, but I don't know which ones actually, like if I've seen any before Lord of the Rings, like that came out before that, do it like this. So it's not that I haven't seen it before, and maybe this set the standard for, but it was just done really well, and it was a very compelling part of the story.
Right.
Also, I have
But
to say
yep.
that I don't remember his name, but the King of Rohan, who was
Theoden.
what?
Theoden.
He sucks as a king
Wow. Hot take.
because okay, let me talk to you real quick here.
Okay.
So
Hit me up.
first of all, basically Gandalf and Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli, that whole
Mhm.
group comes in and they basically rescue him from this evil dude, right?
Sure.
And even
Yep.
saves him from killing him, which was obviously a you could call a mistake because he's who's telling them that they're at Helm's
Yeah,
Deep and
Aragorn. I think it was Aragorn who said, "Don't kill him. There's been enough bloodshed." Like that was
yeah
stupid as hell.
yeah. I mean, I
I disagree with any that would even happen. I think that was needed for him to go back and report to Saruman. And like that inner like they wanted to get rid of him, but they wanted a way not to kill him, and so they just had this lazy excuse like, "There's been enough." That's such a trope in movies. There's been enough bloodshed. Fuck
yeah
that. That's dumb.
you can
Killing
totally
people all day, all like, and
yeah, but
you're gonna save that guy? Okay.
yeah, but this was a guy who was un it's almost like one of those I understand why they did it. I'm not saying it was the best way. I'm sure that if they didn't do that, if they killed him, they could have easily the dude's a wizard. Saruman is a wizard. He could figure out how to find out that they're there, that they're at Helm's Deep.
Sure.
He could have figured out a better way to do it, I'm sure. But so yeah, you could have done it better, but this other character who was evil and went back and reported to him. I also understand the heroic nature of he wasn't armed, so like not killing like an armed guy and all that kind of stuff. And not that they stated that specifically in the Lord of the Rings, like, oh, you can't kill somebody that's unarmed, but it's a heroic trope and all this kind of stuff. And also just he was cowardly and scared and like just let him go. He's not causing any more problems here, just let him go. I get it. Was it dumb? Yeah.
Executing people is usually seen as pretty like, yikes.
Right. So I understand it to a degree. But anyways, back to the king. So they saved him from that. Gandalf banished that spell over him and all that, and then they talk to him and they disagree with his idea of going to Helm's Deep, and that is going to trap them. But he's like, it's basically saved us many times before. Going here, we can defend it, whatever. And they didn't really like get mad at him or anything like that. They did when they were away from him, like, oh, we disagree, and talked like in their own little group. But they respected his decision, and they were nice to him after they saved him. They respected his decision and went with him and helped him out and all this stuff. And then after all of that and all the stuff that they've done to help them, when they get to Helm's Deep, he is like, we'll fight to our last breath, and just kind of disregards anything they have to say. Like, you should ask other people for help. He's like, nah, it's long past that. I'm not doing that. And I'm like, well, try. Well, I get that you have this stuff, like, if you don't want to try, but you're just being mean. Like, everything that the ideas that they gave, like, we're gonna die. It's 300 people against 10,000, and you're just like, well, we'll die to our last breath then. Suck it up. It's like, I get that's kind of a heroic king thing, but it's like you're also just being awful. No, do you disagree?
I think because
War,
the history of like Gondor and Rohan is probably more complicated than that. I don't know everything. It's kind of implied that they're not on great terms, and it's even a hell of a surprise that the elves show up. But and honestly, if they had sent riders to Gondor, it wouldn't have helped anyway, because you see later in the movie what's happening in Gondor. They can't spare anybody. They're also fighting Mordor on the other side, basically. So it's not, overall, it doesn't actually really change anything. Would it have hurt to send a guy out on a horse to run out? Probably not. But so I mean, I get that, but at the same time, he's in a really stressful situation, and honestly, you could probably, even though he was kind of like under a spell, type of thing, like he probably also still blames himself. So that's kind of for the situation that he's in,
right. So
for letting it go this far.
There's that, and then at the end, closer to the end, when he was like, we've lost, and they just kind of gave up, and there were still people fighting. Sure, you guys are pretty much dead and you're lost. But he got to a point where he pretty much was just like, we're done. I'm giving up. And like, you were so for the part of, we're going to fight to our last breath. So if you want to be a noble like king and say, at least you're going to fight to your last breath, even by taking, children who are male that are old enough to just hold a sword, which is, horrible, but like that's kind of something that happens and you're just supposed to be emotionally invested in that. I get that. So I'm cool with that. But, and then to just kind of give up. And then Aragorn has to give him this speech of like, we have to fight to the last breath. It just, his arc is this, as this king from the group of people that helped save him, and then he wouldn't listen to any of their advice, and then he's like, well, we're gonna at least fight. I'm like, well, you're kind of dumb, because you could at least also try to listen to their advice, at least try to listen to their advice and get better reasons to why it wouldn't work. And then after all that, you don't even stick to your own plan and what you think is making you a powerful king, and you just give up. I don't know. It just, and then you had to get convinced by this other guy's like, yeah, we should ride out one last time. I'm like, dude, you suck. You suck as a king. And it didn't distract me from liking the movie. I just, as a character, and I think he played that character well, I just don't think he was a good king. Just don't think he was.
Well, the thing is that like Aragorn kind of does the same thing that Theoden does, where Aragorn's arguing for him to send out riders, and you have Theoden kind of has that whole speech of like, what would you have me do moment, which I actually like a lot. But then later Aragorn and Legolas are talking, and Legolas is basically telling him, it's when they're talking in Elvish, and Legolas is basically like, listen, like, this is not going to work, we're going to die if we stay here. Like, it's kind of not our mission to die with these 300, soldiers of Rohan. Like, it's not, we have a thing that we are clearly supposed to send out to go do. We're supposed to help get the ring to Mordor. That's it. That's all that matters. So if we die here, it's all in vain. And obviously Aragorn rejects that, and he says, that we're going to die with him. So you kind of, what you're complaining about Theoden, Aragorn does a little bit too, but
Oh, I
Aragorn's
agree. I
also,
thought that was kind of dumb of him at the
yeah.
time as well. But Aragorn,
Mhm.
like the way we've seen his character progress, and then maybe get a little bit to the point of like having to be loyal and having to be this powerful, person, and then at the end, I don't. I feel like he has enough changes, and we can relate to him enough to where the king. I just didn't get enough time with him, but
Yeah.
I felt like, and again, it's not that like it distracted me from the movie. It's not even that the character wasn't a good character for the movie. I just think, as a personal standpoint, I was like, it made the movie interesting, but I just think he's a bad king. That's just my opinion. I just think, well, he sucked as
Well,
a king.
so Aragorn is like obviously descendant of kings, and he's kind of like the unofficial, like, head guy, being a descendant of I can never remember his name, but the guy who originally basically ended Saruman all those thousands of years ago. So um he is supposed to be like the best of them. So in a way, they kind of needed someone like Theoden to kind of like, they wanted him to also be a good king. And I think, maybe we don't know enough to make that judgment, but, he has to kind of come off as the more admirable, more courageous, more optimistic kind of guy. And so you have to bounce off of somebody who disagrees with you. And so maybe that's not the best way to do it, but I kind of see where they were going with that. If that makes
Okay.
sense.
Again, yeah, and again, I'm not. I'm just saying this is the fun
It's not
part of
even.
the movie
It's
I like to
not
talk about. I
a.
like to talk about my fun
Yeah.
personal opinions of like, oh, what I thought of this and what I thought of that, and like not even necessarily in a movie making perspective. I
Yeah.
just
It's not
opinions, and
against
like
the.
my opinion is, bro, he sucks as a king, dude.
Yeah.
And I'm cool. I'm cool. People hate me for that. Like if you think he's a great, I guarantee there's other people who agree with me that like Lord of the Rings, and it might
Or
be a
certainly
small
know
percentage,
probably a lot more about it and stuff like that. Yeah.
but
You know what I thought was funny when we were talking about the acting earlier? It might reminded me. I went on like a kind of a weird tangent where, like, I remember I was telling you that Aragorn was supposed to be Nicolas Cage when we talked about
yeah.
the Fellowship. Turns out I found out that originally, Peter Jackson wanted Jake Gyllenhaal to be Frodo. Um, and that he had him come in and audition, and Jake Gyllenhaal bombed the audition because he didn't know that they were doing like English accents. So I just love the idea that Jake Gyllenhaal comes in and he's like, "Oh, what's up, Gandalf? Like, are we going? Rings, Mordor?" Like, I just doing it in like a like regular American accent
Is that
is so funny to me, because anytime you have a medieval based movie, they're always English accents every time.
well? First of all, that's hilarious. I agree, but also, why? That's enough to bomb the audition to just be
Oh
like,
yeah.
why? No, but my point is, from a casting point of view, why do people
Mhm.
who I was auditioning for go? We're doing this with accents. like I feel like that's a thing to where, and maybe it was written down, so they're like, we're not going to tell him because he should know, and it's embarrassing enough that he didn't read the script well enough, so he's not invested enough. We don't want him in our movie, I
This
guess.
was
But why don't just be like, just to see how he would do, to be like, do you mind trying this thing in an English
he
accent?
might have he might have been like, "I can't do a."
Right.
Yeah.
That
Because
might
I
have
mean, he was
happened. I have more
when they were
chance believing
casting this,
that because
he was probably, like, 19, you know what I mean? This was, like, before he had really done anything. Um, because this is when they were casting Frodo for the first time, so this is well before, like, any of the actual productions, like, well before the movies came out. So he was young, and, it would make sense to me if he just, like, didn't know, or he maybe couldn't do an English accent. Now thinking about his career, I don't know if I've ever heard him do an English accent in the movie.
yeah, I don't know. I
Maybe
don't
I'm
know if I
missing
have
something
either.
big, but I've never yeah, it's never really come off that he's been English. You could probably make it work now or something like that, but,
Okay,
I yeah, just
another part of the
found
movie that I thought was really funny
yeah.
was when Gimli looks at Aragorn when they sneak around to the front gate to like fend off all the evils,
Mhm.
the Uruk-hai and stuff, and he looks at him and he goes, "Toss me."
Toss me. Oh, yeah.
And I just started laughing because obviously in the last movie he's like, "No one tosses a dwarf." He's like, "Don't tell
Don't
the
tell
elf."
the elf. Yeah, Gimli gets a lot of good there's a lot of short Gimli jokes in this movie.
I want to see Gimli be. Hopefully, I will in this next one. I want to see him be like just an awesome axe wielding fighter, and we saw a little bit of that. But this movie just had a lot of like humor
When
at
he
his
does
expense.
throw Gimli in on the bridge at Helm's Deep, I swear if you look at it's like a cannonball landed. It's like they all get thrown out. Uh, I watched this movie twice over the past week, coincidentally. Like I watched it, once because knew we were doing this, obviously. But then I just happened to watch it again because I was with some people who were just watching it. And what's it? One of the people we were watching it with is a huge Lord of the Rings fan, like knows a lot of the lore, and he was telling me that dwarves were made how they are, right? So they're really small because they were made by one of the, like one of the gods of Lord of the Rings, but before the god had ever seen man or elves. So he didn't know the proportions correctly. So he's just like, that's probably what they look like. Like he just made a little person basically.
That's
Not knowing
hilarious,
that they're
dude.
supposed to be like 6 feet tall or whatever. But canonically, I think they're like a lot tougher and stronger than like your average dude, even though they're like really small. So
Right. No,
uh,
yeah, that I think so as well. But that's what I'm saying is I want to see that because this movie had a lot of humor at Gimli's expense, which
oh
was
yeah,
good. But I also want to see him be like this fun, like that funny dude, but who's also like a crazy, awesome, like strong axe wielding warrior man. Um, so let's see what else I got here. What else I got? I don't know, man. Do you have any other specifics that you want to talk about? Because I really did like it all around. There were moments that I actually got like just super pumped and like got chills just because I was like, oh yeah, this is epic, dude. I love it.
um, I always think the part where they meet, where it's a Frodo and Sam bit, and they get caught basically by Faramir, and that whole interaction and the weird thing with Gollum and that, where like you know he like what's it, Frodo admits who he is. Like he doesn't lie about who he is, but he lies about Gollum being with them, and then he's basically used later to like trick Gollum into being in custody. And it's just a weird thing. And it's just like, why did he? I don't understand the motivation. Maybe I'm missing something here, but like, why did he not lie about who he was? He could have just said, "Oh, I'm just running away from the war." When he got picked up, like I'm nobody. Um, because it's kind of known that the Baggins name is kind of known. Like I think Gandalf in Fellowship specifically told him, "Don't tell people you're a Baggins." But so that's he didn't lie about that, but then he lied about Gollum. Like why not just admit who he was beforehand? It's just a weird interaction that creates conflict where it didn't feel like there needed to be.
Was there an issue with like should he have even told him that Gollum was with them?
Why not? right? Because why did he lie? Because the whole point of why Faramir went through all this stuff is because he didn't trust him. And so obviously when he found out the lie, that hurt the trust more. And so they had to go through all this. They almost got killed in Gondor, and all this other stuff happened because of this dumb lie that I don't know why happened. They could have just said, we're running away. We got lost, and we got all mixed up and stuff we shouldn't have been in. This guy, this little creature, we've reluctantly teamed up with him because he's guiding us through. We're just trying to get out of here, basically. I feel like that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say. I mean, who would have expected two hobbits to have the most powerful thing in existence? You know what I mean? That doesn't make any sense. So,
But I think they kind of know that Gollum wants the ring, no?
I don't know why they would know who Gollum is. That could be
guess
something
not.
I'm missing.
I was gonna say, if they knew who Gollum was, they know that he's looking for the ring, which would be the only reason Gollum is even near these people.
As far as I know, the reason that Gollum had the ring for so long is because it was assumed that it was lost, and then like Gollum had it, and he was just basically hoarding himself. I don't see Gollum as being a person that people know about in the world. You know what I mean? He's
Right.
not like Gandalf. He's just this weird thing. In fact, they didn't even say his name; they just said that creature, that gangly one or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like I said, there are still like that is one of them, but there are still a few moments in this movie that you're kind of like, this doesn't really make sense. And I'm kind of interested to know what the books kind of say about all this stuff. Like how does this compare to the books? Was this just to further the plot along for the movie? Because I feel like books are pretty decent at like being able to explain stuff in a way to make the plot, move on.
probably a lot easier in a book to go back and change something because you don't have to reshoot it. You just erase them. Like
Right.
you
So
just go.
that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying
Actually,
it's
that
not
makes
easier.
sense.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that because of that, because usually I feel like there's not as many plot holes in books as there are in movies.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I
There's
think.
I think there's a lot less constraints in books in general. Like, things can be a lot longer or they can be shorter. Like, you can play around with that as you want.
Right. So there's a lot less opportunity for there to be plot holes in books than there are movies. So I'm wondering if that was an issue like that or other issues with, plot holes in this movie. If that was present in the book or if that was just because obviously they have to make this into a movie to fit into a certain amount of time. And so
Yeah.
they have to come with something to move it along.
I wouldn't even say it's necessarily a plot hole because, a character making a poor decision isn't necessarily a plot hole unless it's egregious, right? Like, I mean, if you have a character who's a scientist and then you ask him some basic science and he goes, oh, I don't know, and he dies because of it, that would be a plot hole to me. But a character under pressure making a dumb decision just by itself probably wouldn't count. It's just a little odd.
Right.
That's pretty much it. I'm not going to hanker on it too much.
The Ents were cool.
Yeah, no, the Ents are dope. That whole like raid on Isengard is super. Did you see? There's they light one of the Ents on fire when they're raiding, and then when they break the dam and they basically flood it, you see the guy on fire, rush into the water. It's really funny.
Yeah. So funny enough, I actually turned this on and my mom was watching it too because I split this up into usually I'm like I want to watch it all in one go, but I had to split this one up into like watching the first half one night and the second half another night.
Sure.
So my mom like caught it as I was starting it, so she sat down and watched it, and then so when I was watching it the other night, she was like, "Oh, I'm finishing this," and so she watched it with me, and she saw that part, and I didn't even catch it. She goes, "Oh my gosh, that tree's head was on fire and he dipped in the water. That was hilarious." I said, "What?" And I had to rewind it, and so I saw it. It was great.
Yeah, it's really good. No, yeah, that part's great. Although,
More though, I thought they were going to go to Helm's Deep and save them. I thought that's what was going to be the savior because they saw the armies moving out, and Merry and Pippin saw the armies moving out, so they were going to go where the armies were going to help that fight, and then they just went to attack Isengard, and I was like, okay, well, fighting on two fronts is still cool, but that's not what I was expecting. Also,
yeah,
Isengard be that close to the forest when they came out of the forest, so that was the reason they went straight to Isengard.
Yeah, they went inside. I think they went on because you remember they have Pippin has the Ent turn around.
Yeah, they're
and go.
It's like, no, let's go south, and the tree goes. I've always liked south. It always feels like I'm walking downhill.
I know it was a lot of work. For a guy who apparently says, trees don't often talk because it takes a long time to say, so what you say better be worth saying. He says a lot of dumb shit.
Oh man. I think, dude, that's it. I don't have anything else to say. There's plenty of other specifics, like I feel like that I could get into, but I can't remember all of them. Mainly because I took less notes because I did just feel more invested. So it's getting to me. I'm even more excited for the last one, and if it lives up to the excitement, not expectation of what's going to happen, more of just the
Yeah.
excitement and continuing to keep me involved, then I will stamp of approval on this series. But man, we'll just see what this next movie brings for me.
Yeah, and then we'll go right into The Hobbit, and dude, you'll just be so disappointed.
That's what I've heard. I mean, I heard that before I even saw Lord of the Rings. I heard that people
Yeah,
didn't like The Hobbit and they love The Lord of the Rings, but I feel like that's kind of always how it happens with these kind of things. How many Hobbits are there?
3, same amount.
So again, they're
They're
taking a page
also
out of
pretty
Star
long.
Wars, huh? They're doing the main trilogy and then they're doing early trilogy. So we're just
Well,
waiting on
the
the
thing is
sequel trilogy now,
yeah,
guys.
I know. So Tolkien is kinda known for having, like, 3 like, I guess 3 series, even though The Hobbit was the first thing he wrote, like, in this universe, I believe. I know it was definitely before The Lord of the Rings and then later on The Silmarillion, but, I don't know if he wrote something else weird, but
So he
it's
wrote
the
The
first
Hobbit
thing he wrote.
first?
It was yes, The
Oh,
Hobbit was written first,
interesting.
and it's kind of it's aimed towards children, much more than, like, The Lord of the Rings and Silmarillion are, and it's a lot shorter. It's 1 book, it's really short. In fact, like a lot of people, kind of grew up on The Hobbit, the book. I know that like my parents, both read it when they were kids, I believe, and so the egregious thing about The Hobbit is that you take this like 80-page kids book and you make it into like 3 movies that are, I think, pretty long too. Like they're not like 90-minute 3 movies. They're like 2 hours plus each, 3 movies for this 80-page book.
If that's the case, I'm definitely gonna read the book first. If it's a not a very long book that I know I
I'm
can
pretty
get through, I'll
sure.
probably read the book and then go watch the movies out of curiosity.
Yeah, I haven't read the book actually, but maybe I should. Maybe I'll do that too. Maybe not.
Yeah, probably not. You don't read.
But I've just heard that it's very much like 2 sentences from a book will be stretched on for like a 20-minute scene, just because okay, the book page count seems a little longer than I thought, 310, but still, that's not, like, crazy for a book, and that's still a lot. I mean, if you probably
It's a
counted
lot. It's still a lot for
all
3
the
movies.
Lord of the Rings books, then you'd be like, "Okay, how do they even do this?"
Now I know script writing and book writing are completely different. I do
Yeah,
know this. Um, because obviously you don't describe stuff as in much detail in
a
a
script,
script
yeah,
than you do a book. But if you're going off of scripts, are roughly the way that the industry kind of does it is a page is about a minute of screen time.
right.
So if we take that, and honestly, it would actually a page would be less because they just describe things longer. So it'd actually probably be less, maybe even half
Yeah,
a minute. So it'd be even harder. But let's just go with the minute. A 300-page book in 3 movies, that's 100 pages. So that's 100 minutes, which is like an hour and what's 100 minutes. So
120 minutes is 2 hours.
it's an hour and 40 minutes. Because
Yep.
yeah, so an hour and 40 minutes. But let's say because of book can describe more, let's say it's half. So we're talking like half a movie length,
Yeah.
maybe.
Probably
Maybe.
like 90 minutes. Yeah, 90 minutes would be fair,
No, but
which
I'm 90 minutes is like a movie length because that's what I'm saying. 90 minutes and you bump it up to 100, it's 140 minutes. But if you say that a book, since you can go into more description or whatever, you can describe it more in depth, is actually not a page per or a minute per page. It's less because
yeah,
you're
so
just
if you cut it in
describing,
half, so you
say
get
half of that.
300
You're
page
talking like
book into
45 minutes, maybe.
I
Maybe.
don't
My point is,
kinda
it's
long
really going to be hard to stretch that into 3 movies. I'm just agreeing with
yes,
that.
that
So
is
it'll be
the general
interesting
thing.
to see.
I don't think you could do The Hobbit in 45 minutes, but
Yeah.
yeah, it would be,
But we'll see.
yeah,
Now we're just talking about future plans. So
I
keep
don't
keep
yeah, we're not committing to doing The Hobbit right after Lord of the Rings.
keeping keep up with us and follow the next episode. Obviously, be doing the last Lord of the Rings movie, and maybe we'll make an announcement if we're going to do the Hobbit or not. We'll see. We'll have some discussions, but that's all I got for this one.
Yep, cool,
Cool,
alright.
guys.
Well,
Go
we've
follow.
you,
Go follow all
I've
our stuff. I got to plug it.
you're a brother.
What are you
Okay.
saying? We're talking at the same time. You go.
I said, "We've been us, you've been you. I'm a movie, you're a brother."
All right, so
That's it.
all of what you said was nonsense anyways. Yeah, go
Yes.
follow at That's Movies Brother on Instagram. If you guys are listening to this on Apple Podcasts and you enjoyed, please give us a rating, preferably 5 stars. If that'd be great. Really helps us out a lot. We're also on YouTube.
Follow us
So
on Twitter too. Wow.
yeah, we're on
Wow.
Twitter, we're on Facebook. Go find us anywhere you can
I need a good substantial following on Twitter so I can tweet out crazy stuff and people have to listen to it because I have followers. So we can make that happen.
But in the meantime, we'll be on every podcast platform you can think of. If you can find one that we're not on, I'd be impressed. And yeah,
Well, actually, let me know so I can get on there.
yeah.
'Cause I don't know all of them. I mean, I just kind of let the thing does it for us. I don't know.
But it's a lot. We're on a lot. So yeah. Come back next week for the last conclusion.
The last conclusion.
Movie of the series of the Rings of Lords, and we'll see you guys next week. 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 Next week.